I want to talk to you about the climate change. Remember this? Nobody
Yeah,
talking about that anymore.
no, no.
So, for the first time, China emission of carbon drops. Well, its energy consumption increases. This should be a big news, right? So, but nobody's talking about that. The China set its own goal for 2030 to reach the carbon emission peak, and then 2060 carbon neutral. So that's China's own goal. And it seems like the first goal, this 2030 goal, is achieved last year because based
Yeah,
on the diagrams I see, was March last year, 2024. From then on, it has started to go down. So China achieved its own goal 6 years, the first one 6 years earlier. In the meantime, there's a report about the EPA, the US EPA, is now drafting a plan to end its ability to fight climate change. So the plan is not to fight climate change, to end its ability to fight
yeah,
climate change. Your
yes.
take.
Well, I mean, this is a huge topic, but you're completely right. That is the policy. I mean, the United States has made an incredible decision, which is to return to fossil fuels.
Mhm.
They're doing that. They're going to continue. I mean, the whole rhetoric coming out of the United States is fossil fuels. The
Mhm.
president talks all the time about drill, baby, drill. He said the same to Keir Starmer, by the way, whilst he was in Britain just recently. And I mean, it is amazing. And it obviously forget about climate change. That problem isn't important anymore. It's an incredible paradox that just a few years ago, you remember, people would say, we are fighting for climate change in the West, but
Mhm.
really it's those Chinese, they're still building coal mines and having
Yeah.
coal mines and coal mines, coal-fired power stations. And they're undermining our great project. Now, China is by far the biggest um, user and
Mhm.
developer and technological power behind renewable energy systems. And suddenly we've all lost interest in this. And we're going back to oil and gas. And
Mhm.
before long, I suspect to coal as well. Now, um, what you may not know is that there's a very, very famous and very uh, great British historian called Adam Tooze. He particularly is an economist on economic matters. Anyway, he's just been to China and he's actually just delivered a lecture in Beijing, and it's making huge waves here in the UK in the academic world. And his point is that it's not just that China is now the world leader in renewable energies,
Mhm.
but that China's energy production output based now mostly on renewable technologies is skyrocketing.
Mhm.
And there have been graphs provided in which you see how energy output in Britain, for example, it started in the 18th century, gradually went up. Now it's curving down. The
Mhm.
same in the United States, started in the 19th century, went up gradually, and then curving down. With China, it's the graph is like this. It's
Mhm.
just it's just zooming
Mhm.
upward. And he said there is no precedent for this in any period of economic history. What China is clearly doing is that it's not just embracing the new technologies, but it understands that these new technologies are going to be based on, are going to be very heavy energy using. They're going to need lots and lots of electricity, and that the only way to generate electricity at that level is through the adoption of green technologies. And he also makes the point that across the global south, green technologies are winning everywhere.
Mhm.
And where are people going to go to? They're going to go to China
Mhm. Mhm.
because the United States and the West are choosing the technology of the past, fossil fuels,
Mhm.
well, whereas China represents the technology of the future. And that also, if you want to upgrade your energy system, um, these new technologies that China is pioneering are much better adapted to the needs of global South countries than the old technologies were
Hmm.
or are, because whereas in the past the imperial powers could control the supply of oil and
Yeah.
coal
Hmm.
and gas, nobody can control power provided by the sun
Hmm.
and the wind and even nuclear power.
Yeah.
So it's created a huge. This lecture has created a huge impression, and this is a very, very important person in the academic world. Of course, most people in Britain haven't heard of him, but in the academic world, he's very well known.
That's a very good point because
Mm,
that will hopefully decrease this tension regarding natural
yeah,
resources, right? The
exactly,
fight for oil and
exactly,
coal and gas and
exactly,
yeah.
exactly, exactly.
And um, just to give you a little bit of background, right? In China, there's a lot of discussion about this whole climate change thing. China truly interested in this.
Yeah.
Uh, and so one of the leading person, his name is Ding Zhongli. He's a geologist, also a member of the Chinese Academy of
Mm,
Science. So he was the chair, the lead delegation, the Chinese delegation to went to 2009 Copenhagen Climate Summit. And subsequently, he gave interviews. What he said is this: that it was very, very tense. Apparently, that meeting because the West they are pressuring the developing countries. So what they're saying is that, oh, this is, we have to stop the emission because the climate, the temperature will increase. If it's increased more than 2 Celsius degree,
yeah.
then there will be catastrophe. Okay, so because of that, they calculated, they have this IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel of Climate, to produce some
Mm,
uh, study and
mm,
claiming this 2 degree. Okay, that's where this number come from. And in order to do that, we cannot let, more than the emission cannot be more than, I think, 8,000 billion tons of
yeah.
carbon or something. Now, within that, what they were saying is that, okay, because it's such an urgent task for everybody, well, we should all reduce or limit our emission. And what they proposed in this climate summit is that the developed countries, the Western countries, their emission per person should be 2.3 times of the
Mm,
developing countries. I mean, why is that? Why is your per person emission can be 2.3 times? Well, they're saying it used to be before that, their emission is 7.5 times. So for that reason, they already have compromised that they lowered. Not only that, followed with the G8. Remember, Russia was
mm,
still the G8. So in G8, they had another proposal saying, well, out of the 27 Western countries, they should be able to allocate like 44% of that 8,000 billion tons of emission to be allowed. And the rest of the country, almost like 100 countries, should stand for 56%. If you look at the population, this 27 countries, 1.1 billion. This was 2009 number, and the remaining was 5.6 billion people
yeah.
to be given. So you see how angry China got when these numbers came out,
Mm,
because what they're trying to do, according to, based on China, which I agree, that is that they want to eventually allocate the emission to every country. And if you exceed that number, they're going to fine you. They're going
yeah.
to, heavily fine. And China, be a big emitter, certainly will be heavily fined. So
Yes.
that's what this is about.
Well, absolutely. It's exactly what it's about. It's also about creating a people that you can blame for the situation, and go after China. And it's also about locking the global south
Yeah.
into a period
Yeah.
of preventing its
Mhm.
development. I mean, I'm sorry to put it in that rather blunt way, but that's what it's really about at the end of the day.
Yeah. And
With
and
the
that's
West,
why,
as I said, it's always about power. Always remember
yeah,
this. I don't mean power in terms of electricity generation. I mean power in
yeah.
terms of political and geopolitical power.
So this climate thing become an excuse for them to exert further, exert
Correct,
their power. Yeah.
correct,
Mhm.
absolutely. I mean, it's no longer. I mean, it now serves a particular purpose, which is essentially to push and to control the global south, and also
Yeah.
to go after China, which
Hmm.
is ultimately what it's all about. Always with the West, it's what it's about. Even as the United States itself returns to fossil fuels, which makes the whole thing even more absurd.
And that's why Ding Dongli's conclusion is that he said emission rights is equal to development rights and equals
Yeah,
to human rights. I think
yeah,
that's a good point.
he's
Yeah,
absolutely right. He's
yeah,
completely correct. Yeah.
yeah. And guess what? The United States sanctioned him, a scientist, a
You
serious
know,
scientist.
I know. So exactly sanctioned him. I mean, it is just unbelievable, in fact. Um, can I just say something, Sophia? Some years ago, it was a couple of years ago, about 5, 6 years ago, when we first started doing programs on the Duran, um, um, Alex and I did a program. It was just after the United States had, for the first time, sanctioned a number of people in China.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that this is the first step. Now the United States is on the escalation escalator.
That's right.
And it will eventually, inevitably, start small, but it will go all the way up to the top. Because once you do that with sanctions, you
Mm-hmm.
never get off them.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing, he also in 2021, Ding Zhongli, he also said that let's look, I bet you that these, the Western countries, that they're going to abandon their goal. And sure enough, just this year, so Germany is expected to miss its 2030 climate target, which is reducing greenhouse gas emission by 65% compared to 1919 level. This
Yeah,
is according to their government advisor and reports from Climate Action Tracker. So they have that. And Britain, I just saw that Kami
Badenoch. Yeah,
Badenoch, she's the Conservative Party leader now, right? So she is now saying it's impossible for the UK to meet its net zero target by 2050.
yeah,
This target, my understanding is, has been signed into law by Theresa May, her own
yes,
party.
yes,
And now she's saying it's impossible. So they're
yes.
not going to meet their goal.
The Conservative Party is increasingly hostile to the whole um, idea of moving towards renewables. I mean,
Mhm.
they basically follow in the wake of Donald Trump. He's outspokenly critical of them, so they feel they have to be. And Nigel Farage, who is, the new
Mhm.
Reform Party, he's even more so that way.
Mhm.
There's the Labour government still pretends that it's going to continue that policy, but there's no real sign that it will. You know, our policies on climate in Britain and across Europe are so disorganized that it's not surprising that there's a reaction against them. I mean, I'll give you an example. I've been taking a lot of interest in the question of electric cars because,
Mhm.
as you may know, um, um, purchases of electric cars have been falling in Britain
Mhm.
instead of increasing. And the problem that people come up against and what they constantly complain about is that there is no infrastructure.
Mhm.
There isn't sufficient infrastructure to make them work.
Mhm.
And the reason the infrastructure isn't there is we come back to the other one. There isn't the power generation.
Mhm.
There just isn't enough electric power. Then there is no plan to build systems, to clean systems that would generate electric power. So the result is that not only are the targets being missed, but we're falling back. It's not that people don't want to go electric, it's because they can't. It's impractical.
You see, these are the topics I think European unions and the Britain should discuss with China
Yeah.
to
But of course,
seek collaborations, right?
yeah.
Now, the other thing, what this Ding Zhongli was saying, which I never paid attention to, is that he said China will continue its own goal, whether the Europeans, whether they do that
Yeah.
or not, because he said not only renewable energy is good for climate, but also he said that like both coal and oil, they are very important natural resource. Just to burn them is inefficient. It's
Yes.
wasteful.
Yes.
Because like
It's
oil, we know that chemicals, there are lots of chemicals, the pharmaceuticals coming from oil, and coal actually has rare earth elements. We talk so much about the rare earths.
right.
Coal itself has rare earth elements. So these are useful, very important natural resources that are limited, right? They are not easily to produce, naturally. And so that's why we should use them in a much more productive way. I don't see any kind of these kind of discussion even taking
No.
place in the West.
I've never heard them. I've never heard that before. That's a very good. That's a very, very good point. I mean, what you do find some people say, Adam Tooze is saying it, is that the approach that China is taking is the approach of modernity.
Hmm.
I mean, this is the modern way, the technologically advanced way to develop your economy. I mean, he is. I should say that until fairly recently, he's been the person who's been most talking up the tremendous achievements of the United States as the leading technological and
Hmm.
industrial power in the 20th century. And he's now said, that this is now played out because America is stuck with the old technologies and China is developing the new ones. And ultimately, the new ways of generating power are going to be far more efficient.
But why do you think Trump is so strongly supported traditional, like old technology with coal and oil industry? Why is he so much against the renewable? Considering, like, for example, Elon Musk, I would think Peter Thiel, these people should have influenced him. I mean, they should know that, the future is with renewables,
Well,
right?
they've lost out in the political battle
Okay.
because Peter Thiel and Elon Musk,
Hmm.
for example, disapprove of his tariff policy, which from their
That's
point
right.
of view makes no
Yeah.
sense. I mean, the thing about Donald Trump is he's one of these people who um, gets a few ideas, and when he gets them, he finds it. He will never basically drop them. Long ago, he decided that climate change was a scam, so he
Okay.
doesn't believe in it. He is worried, and I think at some level there is a genuine feeling about this, about the effect on the Rust Belt of
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
change of the American economic direction. So he wants to rebuild the Rust Belt. He talks about this a lot.
Hmm.
He goes out there, he meets with the people from there. He has some connections to them. You remember when he announced these tariffs, wasn't he calling in auto workers? When he was having the retaliatory tariffs and all of this. And American car industry has never really, apart from Musk himself,
Hmm.
the car industry has never really managed to move beyond, conventional engines. I mean, it's certainly not electrified in the way that Chinese industry has electrified. So he, like a lot of old people, he sticks to the America. He wants to recreate the America that he used to know. Where Detroit used to churn out these big cars with these big engines,
Hmm.
where there were steel factories all
Yeah.
over America, powered by coal-powered stations, belching out
Uh-huh.
coal fumes and but also power. He has this very old-fashioned vision of America, which of course is completely disconnected from the America that needs to happen if it is going to retain its place in the modern world.
You think
It's
there's
interesting. It's
a
very interesting to say all of this, by the way, because the Russians, who are of course everybody talks about them being all about fossil fuels, the gas station masquerading as a country and all of that. They, on the contrary, are talking about all of these things all the time. I mean, this is a big topic for them. They're taking a slightly different approach. Well, they are taking a different approach from
Mhm.
China, perhaps because they're a northern country, and they don't get much light
Mhm.
in winter, but they're going for hydropower and nuclear
Mhm.
power. And
Mhm. Yeah.
they're one of the big leaders in nuclear power, but they do not think in these, archaic terms.
Mhm. Yeah, so do you think Trump, maybe not just Trump, but there's a
Oh,
nostalgia about Gilded Age. Do you think
yeah,
there's some
absolutely.
elements of that?
There is absolutely that. There's a very, very
Okay.
strong nostalgia. I remember that, by the way, from the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union fell
Mhm.
into the same trap. I mean, they were all
Okay.
into big, heavy
Mhm.
industries of that kind,
Yeah.
which, and there was actually more. Um, Discussion, amazingly, in the Soviet Union than perhaps there is today in the United States within these sort of policy making circles. It was very, very difficult for them to break away from the
Mhm.
old way of doing things. And with Trump and the people around him, they're absolutely stuck in the old way of doing things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the golden period of America, and
Mhm.
they want to return to it. They want to go back to the America they all remember from the 1950s and 60s. And that's the America that they want to see come back.